So if I started making music in 2025, this is the way that I would do it. I've been making music for about 13 years now. And if you're someone that wants to start making music in 2025, or maybe if you've been making this for a while, but you feel like maybe there's like a better way to do it, this video is for you. These are things that I wished someone told me when I started like 13 years ago. So I make electronic music, bass music specifically. So these tips are gonna apply mostly for the people that produce similar music, but I feel like a lot of them apply for any kind of music. First things first, the essentials. You need a computer, you need headphones, and I think that's pretty much it at the beginning. If you plan on doing vocals, a microphone and an audio interface. But if you plan to make like mostly instrumental music with maybe vocal samples that are already in the internet, I feel like at the beginning the only things that you need is a computer that is capable enough to handle a DAW like Ableton or FL Studio or Logic or whatever. Pair at good headphones. I've been using this Audio Technica for a while. ATH M40X, and I feel like I really know how they sound, and that's like the important thing. They might not be like the most accurate production headphones, but I know how they sound, so that's really helpful. So at the beginning I wouldn't invest in studio monitors or studio treatment, fancy gear like extra hardware. I think that can wait. And at the beginning I would just focus on having like headphones, computer, and a DAW. I started with FL Studio, then I switched to Ableton, so that's what I know the most. I know that both of those DAWs are really capable. I would recommend you to stick to either Ableton or FL Studio just because those are the ones that have the most amount of information online. So when it comes to tutorials and just general information on how to do stuff, I feel like those two are the most popular ones. So I would check on tutorials for both of them, maybe as you follow along. I think both of them have like a good trial mode, so you can try both of them. And once you find one that works best for you, I would just stick with that one. You can always switch to another one. As I said at the beginning, I was really liking FL Studio, but then Ableton just, seemed to be like the best option for me at the time. So I don't regret starting with FL. I feel like it was good, and it was like the way that it was meant to be. So once you decided on which DAW you want to use, I would just really start learning the basics of it. So I mean, how to create MIDI tracks, how to lay down your melodies. You start like mastering like the simple stuff at the beginning and really get to know your tool and like all of its different tabs and windows, and really know where to find things out. You don't have to be like a complete pro, but make sure that you feel comfortable with the DAW and mastering the most basic aspects of it. Next, once you feel that you're comfortable with the DAW, I would start recreating tracks. And why I recommend this is because I've found this is the best way to achieve quality fast. You gotta think of achieving quality through quantity in here. So what I would do is pick tracks of people that you like and that you look up to, put it into the DAW, and really start trying to recreate that as close as possible. It's not gonna sound the same at all. You're gonna notice really fast that is very complicated. It's meant to be really hard at the beginning, but even if it doesn't sound close at all, you're gonna start noticing some patterns. The more that you recreate, the faster you'll learn what works and what doesn't. Basically, you're gonna notice Like, what's the drum pattern that they're using? What's the structure that you're using? What kind of sounds are they using? Where are they putting those sounds in the mix? Trying to reverse engineer a track, it's gonna be so helpful. I know that it's hard, and I know that you want to create like original stuff, but trust me that when you try and recreate something, it's just gonna be a huge learning experience and a very humbling one as well. But it's gonna make you good really fast in comparison to just trying to create original stuff without having any reference or anything. And the good thing is that once you start getting decent at recreating stuff, even if it's not sounding like the original one, but once you start like noticing some patterns and getting some learnings out of it, you can start actually making better tracks just because you've been learning from all of these bigger producers basically in an indirect way. Even if you're not like taking lessons with them or anything, you're kind of learning by deconstructing their tracks. And so then when you go and try to make your own stuff, you're just gonna grab from that knowledge and it's just gonna compound and it's just gonna make your stuff sound better. Then after you have recreated a good amount of tracks, I would start like trying to make your own stuff, but always have like a reference track in there, because then you're gonna need it for maybe other things. Even if you're not trying to recreate the tracks, it's gonna help you with things like the structure, like how do I arrange the track, like what do I do next, what do I add in here, what do I take out in here. And reference tracks are just gonna give you clues basically of what to do. And I would focus on finishing the structure, even if you feel like, oh, but my mixdown sounds like shit, or this is not even master or whatever. I really think that as a producer, you really need to get good at finishing tracks, even if they sound terrible. And even if it's really hard to finish the track as it is, I feel like getting into the habit of finishing stuff, it's gonna be way more helpful than focusing on one track until it sounds better or until it sounds perfect. Because at the end of the day, done is better than perfect, because perfect never gets done. So focus on finishing your track, and you can learn about mix down and mastering later, but at the very beginning, just focus on finishing them. Just because I feel like you can learn that later on, I would focus more on the composition and like the arrangement and finishing tracks, because it doesn't matter how good your sound design or your mix down or your mastering is if you cannot finish a track, so that's why I'm focusing more on telling you that you should really get into the habit of finishing stuff before you even learn how to properly mix, master, or sound design. Once you get good at finishing tracks, then yeah, go ahead and start learning about mixing and mastering and sound design. I would say the first thing I would learn in those like 3 categories that I just mentioned, first would be mix down. You can start with the basis of like using volume, panning, and EQ. Then you can jump into more advanced stuff, but I feel like a lot of times just those 3 things can really make a good mix. Then dive into sound design. Try to learn one synth really good. Don't try to learn everything at once, because that's not gonna work very well, I would say. So choose one synth that you really like and really master it. Then jump into mastering, because honestly, once you have a good mix down and a good sound design, like mastering is gonna be a piece of cake. Honestly, like mastering is not that complicated once you have a good mix down and good sound design. So I'm just editing the video now, and I noticed that I didn't explain something the way that I wanted it to explain. So basically, at first, when you are recreating tracks, you're obviously not going to be able to recreate the sound design or like the mix down parts of it, and that's totally fine. At the beginning, what I want you to do is to recreate mostly like the structure, part of it, like focusing on drum grooves and like the call and response pattern, maybe like the melody and stuff like that. Once you get good at like, you know, recreating that part of the reference tracks, then you can start like making your own original stuff, even if you don't know much about mixing, sound design, or mastering. I feel like now it's a good time to start like doing your own tracks. And once you get good at like finishing those tracks, even if they sound terrible, then you can come back to recreating again, and now start focusing more on like the sound design and like the mix down and mastering. And then you can start like looking for tutorials on that, for information on that. Once you get like a decent grasp of how to do like some decent sound design, then you go back to working on your own original stuff, and now you can focus on that as well. You could even like do those two things simultaneously, like in the same week. You could be like recreating while focusing on sound design and mixing, while at the same time you are building a track where you apply like those things that you learned from recreating. So I hope that makes sense. And also, to make things super simple for you guys and easy to follow, I've created a free roadmap document that you can get using the link in the description. And also I'm going to put a pinned comment with the link for you to get it. And there is all the steps that I would take in order, and like the time frame that I would take for each step. So hope that's helpful. So yeah, go back to the original video. I'm gonna say something that might upset you, but you gotta know that those first tracks are gonna be shitty, and you gotta allow yourself to suck at the beginning. You gotta be aware that there's gonna be a gap in between like the thing that you want to do and what you actually do, and closing that gap is gonna take time. You're gonna be always learning, and you know, me, after 13 years I'm learning. I know that I don't know a lot of stuff, because I think that you actually never close that gap, because you always want to improve and you always want to make better music. But at the beginning you gotta know that that gap is gonna be huge, and with time and effort you're gonna start like closing that gap little by little until you start making like the things that you've always wanted to make. So yeah, allow yourself to suck at the beginning, but finish the tracks even if they suck. Nobody has to hear them at the beginning. You don't have to release them. Not everything that you create needs to be released at all. So allow yourself to make bad stuff, because I make shitty stuff all the time and I just don't use it. I just, you know, throw it away or recycle it or whatever. But yeah, nobody does great tracks all the time. So you gotta know that. You're gonna learn that with each track that you finish, you will learn something new, and you can use that for the next one and the next one and the next one. So when finishing tracks and when making tracks, don't think like, oh, this is gonna be the one. Could be, but honestly, think more of like, oh, this, I'm gonna learn something from this, even if it sucks. I think that's like the right mindset to have. When it comes to composing, I feel like it's just gonna depend on the type of music that you're gonna create. But in my case, and for the type of music that I make, I wouldn't focus on like music theory that much. It's obviously helpful if you know music theory, but if you don't, I wouldn't say it's the end of the world. Watch some tutorials about how to play melodies of chords, and that's gonna be really helpful. And also, don't be afraid of using like loops or samples at the beginning. Everyone uses samples or loops. Maybe you don't want to use the sample or the loop as it is. Maybe you can modify it. That's completely fine. But at the beginning, I wouldn't sweat too much if you just drag and drop a loop. I think that, as I was mentioning, you may not even use the track, because at the beginning you are not going to be making like good music anyways, to be, you know, completely honest. So just try to not limit yourself with that kind of stuff. When watching tutorials, also hopefully like follow along, because that's a great way to learn. If you learned by doing, I think that's the best way that you could use tutorials. Don't get stuck in an endless loop of like learning without actually applying it, because you're gonna forget. Have fun with it. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to be perfect. As I said, like, done is better than perfect. every time. Embrace that you're gonna suck at the beginning. You will improve as you go. And even if you end up releasing a track that you don't like, it's not gonna be the end of the world. I've released stuff that I don't like right now, and that's totally fine. I'm still here. I didn't die for making a bad track or releasing a bad track. Also, if you have the resources, I would consider lessons or online courses. I don't say this just because I offer one-on-one lessons. It doesn't have to be with me, the lessons that you take, but just because it can really make things faster for you. I remember that I started fully just watching tutorials and stuff like that, which there was not that much when I started. That's why I make YouTube videos. I kind of want to give back and try to contribute somehow, because I know that it's really hard at the beginning. If you can find a mentor, I feel like that can really speed things up for you. Not only for like how they produce music, but also like for the mindset, which is something that I'm trying to talk about in this video as well. Like the mindset of making music and having fun and allowing yourself to suck. Also, stay organized, be smart about your workflow. That's gonna save you a lot of time in the long run. I've been having students that they have like a very messy workflow and very messy project folders, and that can cost you a lot of time and frustration in some years if you don't know how to organize your things correctly, your files and all of that. So that's the way that I would approach things. So to recap, get the essentials, choose your software and really learn your software. Trying to recreate tracks as close as possible and learn from that as much as you can. When you get into start to making your own tracks, focus on finishing them. Don't overthink music theory, don't overthink fancy gear, that can come later. Don't invest in fancy plugins, maybe just one, maybe like Serum if you are into bass music, but also you have Vital, which is a free alternative. Have fun, be okay with sucking. Find a mentor, also because feedback, like technical feedback, is gonna be super helpful for you. Stay organized. Once you have all of that, you can start learning about mixing, sound design, mastering, maybe start thinking about like studio monitors, plugins, whatever, but try to finish shitty tracks first before you even start thinking of all of that. Something that I was forgetting also is get high quality samples. Sometimes bad samples can really ruin your track, so spend some time and effort into finding good quality samples. Platforms like Splice, they're really good with that. Companies like Excellent Sound have really good sample packs. There are a ton others, so you can definitely Google that. I think that's pretty much it. This video maybe was a little bit too all over the place, but I hope it's being helpful, because I think that's how I would do things. And I feel like that could get you to be really good in a shorter amount of time than not following any plan whatsoever. So I feel like having a plan always is a good thing. So yeah, it's all about having fun. It's about practicing, being consistent, and finishing tracks. Don't stress about being perfect, just enjoy the journey. So yeah, if you found this video helpful, please leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and I hope I see you around.